Israel has been moving right for the past 25 years. The onslaught of terrorism, the first and second Palestinian uprisings, the intifadas, have basically decimated the peace camp in Israel and left many people persuaded that peace is not possible. October 7th, the horrific Hamas massacre, I think, has been the final nail in that coffin. And so you have an Israeli public that's not only traumatized, but persuaded that there's no peace on the horizon.
So where does that leave us, Professor? Here we're several months into this conflict, and from this vantage point here in the States, it just doesn't look like there's any real solution here. Can you walk us through what could be some scenarios here?
Sure. Look, if there's a hope that change will come from the region, I think that's not going to be fulfilled. You don't have the leadership either in Israel, among Palestinians, or in the Arab world that would take this and run towards a more peaceful outcome, which puts the onus very much on the United States and other outside parties. Of course, we're in an election year, makes it challenging politically for the president to consider a major initiative, but without a strong U.S. push, not only to rebuild Gaza and to provide some hope for the millions of people who've been displaced, but also to try to get the peace process back on track. Without a U.S. push, we're going to be fated to have this kind of ongoing violence for years to come.
So give us a sense, Professor, the position of Mr. Netanyahu in Israel in this whole conflict. We know prior to October 7th, there were serious challenges to his position. Where are we now? What kind of role will he play over the coming months and then maybe even beyond?
Well, October 7th changed his political fortunes to a great degree, even though the opposition before that time had been arguing against his ideas for judicial reform. He was pretty firmly in power with a right-wing coalition. Right now, however, his polling numbers have tanked. He's somewhere around 10, 12%.
Right.
And the assumption is that there's an election, he's not going to return. But it's not easy to get rid of a prime minister if that coalition hangs together. And so you have a situation where a prime minister is governing without support.
In the precious time we have left with you, Ambassador, and again, Paul, I can't say enough about someone with roadworthy experience of Cairo and Tel Aviv and Jerusalem as well. But Ambassador, I want to turn to the protests in America, and I want to take it to your Columbia University, and it may be Students for Justice in Palestine. It may be in December, Columbia suspended pro-Palestine student groups. Ambassador, with your service to Egypt and your knowledge of the Arab world, I want you to speak to the kids who are pro-Palestine. What would you say to them?
The hardest thing for those of us who have served in government, but also for those of us in the private sector, is to have two contradictory ideas in our mind at the same time. What happened to Israel on October 7th was unimaginable, and what's happening in Gaza since is unimaginable. And so, to take one side or another really doesn't help resolve this issue. And the argument I've made is on Princeton's campus, where I now teach, or at Columbia, where I did my studies, is we've got to talk to each other about this. It doesn't mean that you can't be a partisan. It doesn't mean that you can't advocate for change, but we've got to start talking to each other.
To our two presumptive candidates, can President Trump and President Biden talk to each other?
Doesn't look like it. They've adopted so many positions in contrast to each other, and now they're moving further away in this era of highly partisan politics, both domestically and in foreign policy.